My name is Jack Turner. I'm a 62-year-old retired Marine Corps veteran. After serving my country for over 30 years, I came back home to the quiet life I always dreamed about. I bought a peaceful ranch just outside of town, in a small Texas county where the cows outnumber the people and the stars shine brighter than streetlights. No noise, no stress. Just me, my loyal dog Max, and the open land. I don't bother anyone, and no one bothers me. I haven't owned a car in over 6 years. Not since my last pickup truck gave up the ghost and I decided to stick to my four-wheeler and old military Jeep that barely leaves the ranch. I don't visit town often. When I do, I call a cab or hitch a ride with one of the neighbors. My ranch is self-sustaining. I grow vegetables, keep some chickens, and spend most of my days fixing fences or enjoying my coffee on the porch. So imagine my surprise when I opened my mailbox one morning and found 87 parking tickets. All from a place called Willow Creek HOA. I squinted at the envelope, thinking it had to be some scam. Maybe it was junk mail. Maybe it was meant for someone else. But when I flipped to the last page, there it was in big, bold letters. Notice of lien to be placed on property for non-payment. They were putting a lien on my ranch for unpaid parking violations. From a place I've never been to, for a car I don't even own. The next day it got worse. A man in a navy blue blazer and sunglasses drove up to my ranch in a shiny black BMW. He walked like he owned the place and didn't even bother to knock before pinning something to the wooden fence near my gate. I watched from the porch, half a cup of coffee still in my hand. My dog Max barked but didn't move. He knew I was about to handle it. I walked over and ripped the paper off the fence. It was real. A legal notice. The lien was official. They were coming after my land. And I had no idea who they were. Let me tell you how this whole crazy mess started. It was just over a year ago. I had just settled into my new rhythm of peace and quiet. Life on the ranch was slow, simple, and honest. Every morning, I'd wake up before the sun, brew my strong black coffee, and feed the chickens while Max chased butterflies. I planted tomatoes, peppers, onions, and cucumbers in the backyard. I even set up a small booth at the weekend farmers market to sell my harvest. It wasn't about money. I had my military pension. It was about connection, about community. One day at the market, a young man named Brandon struck up a conversation with me. He said he was from the nearby town of Willow Creek, about 45 minutes away. We talked about ranching, weather, and the good old days. He said he was trying to fix up his old Mustang and mentioned how hard it was to find someone trustworthy with a big enough space to store it for a while. I didn't think much of it at the time. I just smiled and said, "Well, I've got a big enough field. If you need a spot for a week or two, I wouldn't mind." Brandon was surprised but grateful. He came by the next day, parked his beat-up Mustang on the side of the barn, shook my hand, and promised to come back in a week or two to pick it up. 2 weeks passed, then 3, then a month. The Mustang never moved. I tried calling the number he gave me, disconnected. By the time 2 months rolled around, I was thinking about towing it myself. But I figured it wasn't doing any harm just sitting there, so I let it be. I moved it behind the barn and covered it with a tarp. Out of sight, out of mind. That was my mistake, because sometime after that, things started to feel strange. I'd find envelopes in my mailbox with no return address. Sometimes empty, sometimes with just a blank sheet of paper. Once, someone knocked on my door at 3 a.m. and ran off into the night. Another time, I spotted tire tracks near my back fence. Fresh ones. Max growled but didn't chase. He was old now and not as fast as he used to be. Still, I didn't connect the dots. Until now. Now, I was holding 87 parking tickets and an official HOA lien in my calloused hands, and someone out there was playing games with my life, my land, and my peace. I drove to the county office the next day in my rickety Jeep. The front desk clerk looked at me like I had 2 heads when I told her the problem. She typed a few things into her computer, fumbled with her glasses, then gave me a confused smile. "Well, sir, according to our system," she said slowly, "your property was added to the Willow Creek Homeowners Association jurisdiction 6 months ago." I blinked. "What? I live outside city limits. I'm not even part of any neighborhood." She shrugged. That's what it says here. A new expansion plan. Some paperwork must have been filed. Maybe someone made a mistake. A mistake? Someone made a mistake that was now threatening to take away the land I built my life around? I left that office more confused than ever. I tried to speak to someone from the HOA, but every number I dialed went to voicemail. I left messages. No one called back. Days turned into a week. Then 2. More tickets came. More warnings. Then a final notice. I had 10 days left before legal action would begin. I sat on my porch that night, Max lying beside me. The stars above were clear and cold. I held the letter in one hand and a cup of cold coffee in the other. I served my country, I muttered. I faced bullets, bombs, and sandstorms. But this was war of another kind. I decided to visit Willow Creek myself. If they were going to try and take my ranch, I'd face them head-on. I woke up early the next morning, filled the Jeep with gas, and made the drive to Willow Creek. The town looked like a picture from a brochure. White picket fences, shiny SUVs, kids riding bikes with helmets too big for their heads. Everyone waved. Everything was clean and perfect. Too perfect. I pulled into the community office and walked up to the front desk. A woman in a red blouse looked up with a fake smile. "Can I help you, sir?" I handed her the notice. "I'm Jack Turner. You folks sent me this. I don't live here, and I don't know why your HOA is placing a lien on my property." She took the paper, her fingers pausing when she saw the name. Then she smiled again. But this time, the smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'm afraid you'll need to speak with our HOA manager," she said softly. "He's not in today." I crossed my arms. "Then I'll wait." Her lips twitched. "You may be waiting a while." I sat down anyway. I wasn't going anywhere. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. No manager. No one came. I got up to stretch my legs and peeked down the hallway behind the front desk. A door marked Records Room stood slightly open. Curiosity got the better of me. I walked slowly toward it. Just as I reached for the handle, a voice snapped behind me. "Sir, you need to leave. Now." I turned around to find 2 security guards standing between me and the front desk. And they didn't look like they were joking. I raised my hands slowly, like I was back in uniform and a drill sergeant had just caught me sneaking out of the barracks. All right, I said calmly. "No need to get jumpy. I'm just here to get answers." One of the guards, a younger man with a buzz cut and a shiny name tag that read Kyle, stepped forward. "This building is for Willow Creek residents only, sir. You're trespassing." I gave him a long, slow look. "Funny. Your HOA didn't seem to mind sending 87 parking tickets to a guy who doesn't live here." He didn't respond. The other guard, older and wider in the shoulders, pointed to the door. "We're going to have to ask you to leave now. You can schedule an appointment with the HOA manager. He's very busy." I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that when someone tells you to walk away, sometimes the best move is to step back and figure out another plan. I'd faced tougher walls than this. Brick, concrete, even pride. But nothing as stubborn as bureaucracy. I left the building, my boots crunching against the perfect gravel as I climbed back into my Jeep. As I drove off, I noticed something strange. Down the road, in front of one of the homes, was a silver Mustang. It looked a lot like Brandon's Mustang. Same scratches on the side. Same dent in the bumper. I slowed down and took a closer look. The license plate was covered with dust. Barely readable, but I could just make out the numbers. It was Brandon's car. So how did it end up here? I parked around the corner and walked back toward the house on foot. It was a large, 2-story place with a big for sale sign stabbed into the front lawn. The grass was cut sharp and clean. The windows were spotless. No one seemed to be home. I made my way around the side, hoping to spot something, anything, that would explain what in the world was going on. Then I saw it. Behind the house, tucked next to the garage, was a shed. The door was open just a crack, and inside, I could see stacks of files, folders, and boxes. Some labeled HOA, others with numbers and letters I didn't recognize. But before I could get closer, a black SUV turned into the driveway. I ducked behind the hedge. A man stepped out of the car. expensive shoes, pressed pants, phone in hand. It was the same guy who'd delivered the lien notice to my ranch. He walked up to the front door and used a key. That's when it hit me. This house belonged to someone in the HOA, and Brandon's car was sitting in front of it. This couldn't be a coincidence. I crept back to my Jeep and drove straight home, my thoughts racing. When I got back to the ranch, I found something new waiting for me. A red envelope taped to my gate. I snatched it off and tore it open right there. Final warning, it read in giant, bold letters. You have 5 days to settle your outstanding balance, or foreclosure proceedings will begin. My heart pounded. They were serious. They were really going to take my land. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with anger. I had fought too long and too hard to protect this country, only to come home and have some pencil-pushing HOA try to steal my land over parking tickets I never earned. I decided it was time to get help. The next morning, I visited my old friend and fellow veteran, Charles. He lived in a nearby town and had worked as a private investigator after leaving the service. He was tough, smart, and didn't take nonsense from anyone. I told him everything about the tickets, the lien, Brandon, the Mustang, the shady office, and the man in the BMW. He listened carefully, nodding as I spoke. When I was done, he leaned back in his chair and scratched his chin. "This stinks," he said. "And not just regular stink. This is swamp stink. Somebody's up to something, and it's big." "I figured as much," I said. Charles stood up and grabbed his laptop. "Let's see what we can dig up." We spent the next several hours combing through public records, online databases, and every trace of Willow Creek's HOA we could find. That's when we stumbled onto something interesting. Willow Creek HOA wasn't just an organization. It was also a registered business. And the registered owner? Brandon. That's right. The same kid who parked his Mustang on my property and disappeared. He wasn't just a random stranger. He was the head of the very HOA trying to put a lien on my land. But why? What could he possibly gain? Then Charles found something else, an online listing. A development plan for Willow Creek's Phase 2 expansion. It showed plots of land they wanted to acquire, build new homes, expand the neighborhood. And guess whose land was highlighted on the map? Mine. My ranch was the final piece. If they got it, they'd have enough land to build another 40 homes. "This ain't just about parking tickets," Charles said. "They're trying to force you out." The whole thing had been a setup. Brandon found me, pretended to be friendly, parked his car on my land to create a paper trail. Then, somehow, they used that as an excuse to tie my property to their HOA. Started racking up tickets using his own car, registered at my address. Now they were using those fake fines to take what was mine. I leaned back, jaw clenched. "They messed with the wrong vet," I muttered. But just as we were about to start planning our next move, my phone buzzed. A text message from an unknown number. "You're in over your head. Walk away before you lose everything." Charles read the message over my shoulder. "They're watching you." I looked out the window, my eyes scanning the dirt road leading to my ranch. Far in the distance, I saw a car parked on the hill. Dark windows, not moving, just watching. I stood up slowly and grabbed my old military field bag. If they wanted a fight, they were going to get one. But I was going to fight smart. And I wasn't alone. This wasn't just about my land anymore. It was about justice. And I was going to dig until I found the truth. Because someone was lying. And soon everyone would know. Just then, Charles's laptop pinged. He clicked the alert, then froze. "Jack," he said, eyes wide. "You need to see this." He turned the screen. There it was. A scanned document. A forged deed transfer. It said I had signed over part of my land to Willow Creek HOA. Dated 2 months ago. My signature. My name. But I never signed anything. My knees went weak. They were already trying to steal it. And now they had forged my signature to do it. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. My signature. On a deed I never signed. The words blurred as a deep, familiar fire lit up inside me. The same one I'd felt in combat when something wasn't right, when danger wasn't just coming. It was already here. They forged it. I said quietly. They actually forged my name to try and take my ranch. Charles nodded, jaw tight. This is felony-level stuff, Jack. Forgery. Fraud. Land theft. And if they already filed this with the county, they could move in any time now, legally. But I never even saw this paperwork, I said. I've never spoken to any lawyer. Never agreed to anything. This is my land. I've had it for 7 years. Charles started typing furiously. Let me check something. Yep, here we go. It's filed with the county clerk's office. Says it was notarized by a woman named Cynthia Barron. Claims you were present. Claims she witnessed the signing herself. Who's Cynthia? I asked. She's on the HOA's board of directors. My fists clenched. They're working together. Oh, it's a coordinated job, Charles said, eyes narrowing. I've seen this before. Real estate fraud rings. They target old veterans, widows, or anyone who lives off the grid. People like you who won't notice until it's too late. I stood and paced the room. I've got 5 days, I said. 5 days before they try to take everything. So what do I do? Charles leaned back in his chair, eyes sharp. We hit them where it hurts, their paperwork. We need to prove the signature is fake, and the only way to do that fast is with a forensic document expert. I know a guy in Dallas. Expensive, but reliable. I nodded. I'll pay whatever it costs. All right, Charles said, already dialing his phone. Let's crack this open. The rest of that day was a blur. We scanned the forged deed and emailed it to the expert. Charles made some calls to his contacts in the state veterans legal network, trying to find anyone who could push the county to pause the lien. Meanwhile, I drove back to the ranch, mind racing the whole way. When I arrived home, something was wrong. The front gate was open. I always lock the gate. Max wasn't barking either. I stepped out of the Jeep slowly, scanning the yard. Then I saw the broken glass. The window in my kitchen. Shattered. Someone had been inside. I ran in, heart pounding, calling Max's name. He came limping from behind the barn, tail down, whimpering. His left hind leg was bleeding, nothing too deep, but clearly hurt. I dropped to my knees and hugged him tight. It's okay, boy. I've got you. You're safe. Inside the house, things were tossed around. My office desk had been opened, drawers pulled out. Papers were scattered on the floor. My safe. An old steel box where I kept my grandfather's will, my discharge papers, and the land deed was gone. They weren't playing games anymore. They had broken in. And they took the real deed. Now they had the original and a fake. And I had nothing. I stayed up all night cleaning the mess and comforting Max. I wrapped his leg, gave him some old dog biscuits, and put him on my bed. I couldn't sleep, not with everything spiraling so fast. At dawn, Charles called. The expert confirmed it, he said. The signature is fake. Totally different stroke pattern than your real one. And the notary's seal? Looks like it was cut and pasted from an online template. Sloppy work. But enough to fool a clerk if they weren't looking closely. Can we use this to stop the lien? I asked. We might, but the window is closing fast. You need to take this to the sheriff. Show him everything. I drove straight to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Donnelly was a barrel-chested man with a silver mustache and a quiet voice that could cut through steel when he was mad. I'd known him for years. We served in different branches but always nodded to each other with that silent respect only veterans understand. I told him everything. Showed him the forged deed. The real one now missing. The photos of Brandon's car. The surveillance. Even the anonymous text message. When I finished, he leaned back, hands folded. Jack, he said, this sounds like a serious setup. But it's going to be hard to prove unless we can track that deed back to Brandon or Cynthia. I've got 5 days, Sheriff. He nodded. Let me see what I can do. He promised to make some calls and assigned a deputy to patrol near my property for the next few nights. It wasn't much, but it gave me some breathing room. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, I sat on my porch with Max beside me. We'd been through wars, me on the battlefield, him chasing coyotes off the property. But this was personal. Couldn't let them win. Then, just as the stars began to appear in the sky, A truck rolled up my driveway. I stood slowly, Max growling low in his throat. The truck stopped. Out stepped Brandon, wearing a clean white shirt, a smirk on his face. "Evening, Mr. Turner," he said casually. "Thought I'd stop by. We've got a lot to talk about." I said nothing, just stared. He looked around like he owned the place, hands in his pockets. "Beautiful land you've got here. Prime real estate, too. Shame about all those tickets." I stepped forward, keeping calm. "What do you want?" Brandon shrugged. "Simple. You sign the transfer papers, walk away, and this all goes away. No lawyers. No court. You get a little cash. We get the land. Everyone's happy." I narrowed my eyes. "And if I say no?" He smiled wider. "Then you'll lose it anyway. And we won't be so nice about it next time." He turned and got back in the truck. Before he drove off, he added, "Tick-tock, Jack. You've got 4 days." The taillights disappeared down the road. Max growled low and deep. I stood in the silence for a long time. They weren't just trying to steal my land now. They were threatening me directly. And that was their biggest mistake. Because I wasn't just fighting for dirt and fences. I was fighting for every good man and woman who ever wore a uniform and came home expecting peace. They wanted a war? They just got one. The next morning, Charles called again. "Jack," he said breathlessly, "you need to sit down." "What is it?" I dug deeper into the HOA's records. Brandon's not just part of it. Pause. He founded Willow Creek. The whole neighborhood. The HOA. The development company. It's all under him. And get this, he's done this before. 3 times. In different counties. Sued each time but got away with it. I gripped the phone tighter. Charles continued. "But here's the kicker. The notary who witnessed your signature. She died 6 months ago." I stood on my porch, the phone pressed tight to my ear, heart thudding in my chest. "She what?" I asked, stunned. Charles repeated it slower this time. "Cynthia Barron. The notary listed on your forged deed. She passed away 6 months ago. Heart failure, according to the public record. Jack. She couldn't have witnessed anything. They used a dead woman's seal." My stomach turned. I felt sick. These people weren't just playing dirty. They were playing dangerous. I looked out across the ranch. The breeze rustled the tall grass. Max sat by the fence, still limping a little, eyes fixed on the tree line like he knew someone was watching again. And I was sure someone was. They'd broken into my home. They'd hurt my dog. They'd forged my name. And now they were dragging a dead woman into their scheme. I took a deep breath. "We need to blow this wide open, Charles. How fast can we get this to the sheriff?" "I already sent it," Charles replied. "He's calling the district attorney now. If they confirm that notary's death and match her stamp to the forged deed, this whole house of cards will come crashing down." "Good. But Jack." "Yeah. I just got off the phone with the county clerk. The HOA moved to accelerate the lien. They filed paperwork to auction off your land in 3 days. It's legal. They're using the fake deed to justify it." That hit me like a punch to the chest. 3 days. Yep. We've got to act now. I'm coming over tonight. That evening, the wind picked up as dark clouds began rolling across the sky. Thunder growled in the distance. Storm was coming outside and in. Charles arrived just before nightfall in his old Dodge pickup, toolbox in the bed and a thick folder under his arm. We spent hours reviewing everything again. Photos of Brandon's Mustang, the HOA paperwork, records from the clerk's office, copies of both the forged and original deeds, and now Cynthia's death certificate. "We have enough to blow the lid off this," Charles said. "But we need something bigger, something undeniable, something that proves Brandon knew this was fraud." "Like a confession?" I asked. Charles smirked. "Exactly. I'll never get him to say anything to me." "No," Charles said. "But he might say something to someone else." That's when it hit me. What if we baited him? Brandon thought he had me on the ropes. Thought I was scared, desperate. Maybe I could use that. "Let's make him an offer," I said slowly. "Tell him I'm ready to sign everything over. We set up a meeting, somewhere public. You record everything." Charles nodded. High risk. But if we catch him admitting he set you up, the whole case flips. I agreed. It was our best shot. We made the call the next morning. I used a burner phone Charles had brought and called the number Brandon had texted me from days before. He answered on the second ring. Well, I knew you'd come to your senses, he said, sounding smug. You win, I said, trying to sound defeated. I just want to get this over with. I'll sign. Smart man, he said. Meet me at Willow Creek Park, noon tomorrow. Come alone. Click. We had our meeting, and now we had a plan. That night, the rain came down hard, hammering the roof like it was trying to shake me loose from the ground. I barely slept. Max lay by the bed, breathing steady, finally starting to heal. At sunrise, I put on my cleanest flannel shirt, combed my gray hair back, and tucked the fake deed into my coat pocket. Charles hid a small recorder in my shirt collar. He tested it 3 times before giving me a nod. If anything goes sideways, he said, just walk away. We've got enough already to slow them down. But if we get this, it's over. I nodded. I've faced bullets, Charles. I can face Brandon. We arrived at the park early. Charles parked across the street, pretending to read the paper in his truck. I sat on a bench under the large oak tree near the fountain, where Brandon had said to meet. It didn't take long. Brandon pulled up in his shiny black BMW, wearing sunglasses like he thought he was in a movie. He walked over like he had all the time in the world, smiling like a man about to close the easiest deal of his life. He sat beside me without a word for a moment, then leaned forward. Glad you saw the light, he said. You brought the paperwork? I reached into my coat and handed him the forged deed. He took it without even checking the details. That was fast, I said casually. You always get what you want this easy? Brandon smirked. When you've done this as many times as I have, you learn how to push people just hard enough. Fear's a great motivator. I looked at him. What happens to the land? Oh, we clear it out, resell it, build luxury homes. Make millions. You'd be amazed how cheap people give up what they love when they think the system's against them. He laughed, shaking his head. And that signature? Spot on. Huh? Looks just like yours. I stayed quiet. He leaned closer. Honestly, Jack, I didn't expect it to be this easy. Some folks fight. You just folded. Click. I stood. He looked up, confused. Where you going? That's all I needed, I said. He froze. What? Charles stepped out from the trees across the street, phone in hand. He waved. Brandon stood, eyes wide. You tricked me. You threatened a veteran, broke into my house, hurt my dog, falsified documents. You forged a dead woman's seal. Brandon reached into his pocket, eyes wild. Charles shouted, Hands up! Brandon froze. The park was empty, but Charles had already called Sheriff Donnelly. Within minutes, sirens wailed in the distance. Brandon dropped his hands and stepped back, shaking. You'll regret this. No, I said. You will. Within minutes, Donnelly and 2 deputies arrived. Charles handed over the recording. I handed over the forged deed. Brandon was arrested on the spot, protesting loudly the whole time. But we weren't done yet, because that night, someone set fire to my barn. I woke up to smoke, Max barking like mad, flames lighting up the dark sky. I grabbed the fire extinguisher and ran outside barefoot. The blaze was fast, hot, and hungry. Charles was staying the night in the guest cabin. He was already on the phone with 911, spraying the smaller flames with a hose. We fought it until the fire department arrived. We saved the house, the animals, but the barn? Gone. Burned to the ground. Someone wanted to send a message. Brandon may have been arrested, but someone else was still out there, still watching, still dangerous. The barn smoldered in the morning light, a skeleton of charred wood and twisted metal. Smoke curled into the sky like a silent warning. My grandfather built that barn with his bare hands over 50 years ago. It wasn't just wood and nails, it was history. And now it was ashes. The fire marshal confirmed what I already knew in my gut. Accelerant was used, he said. This wasn't an accident. I nodded. Figured as much. Charles stood beside me, arms crossed. His face was stone. This is retaliation, he muttered. Someone's trying to finish what Brandon started. And they're getting desperate, I added. By now, news had spread. Brandon's arrest had made the local papers. The headline read, HOA developer arrested in land fraud scheme. Veteran speaks out. But I didn't feel victorious. Not yet, because while Brandon was behind bars, someone else had picked up where he left off. The barn fire proved that, and I wasn't going to wait for them to come back and try something worse. The sheriff came by later that morning to check on the damage. We're getting a warrant to search Brandon's office, he told me. Turns out he's connected to 2 other developments like Willow Creek. Same pattern, same forged paperwork, and a few of the same names keep popping up. Let me guess, I said. Cynthia Barron. Before she died. He nodded. And another one, Jared Tate. Ring a bell. I shook my head. No. Real estate attorney, the sheriff explained. He helped file your fake deed. Said you were there in person. I narrowed my eyes. Where can I find him? Don't worry, the sheriff said. We're already building the case. But I'll be honest with you, Jack. These guys have money. Lawyers. Friends in high places. This is going to take time. I don't have time, I replied. They tried to burn me out. He sighed. I've got extra patrol units watching your ranch, day and night. But if I were you, I'd keep everything locked, loaded, and lit, just in case. I looked at Max, who was still limping slightly but alert. I gave him a scratch behind the ears. I'll be ready, I said. That evening, I sat on the porch watching the sun sink behind the blackened shell of my barn. The scent of smoke still hung in the air. My land, my sanctuary, had been invaded, burned, threatened, and almost stolen. But I was still standing. Charles joined me, 2 mugs of hot coffee in hand. He handed me one and sat without saying a word. You ever think, I asked, after everything we went through in the service, that home would be the place we had to fight hardest to protect? Charles took a slow sip. All the time. A quiet moment passed between us. Then his phone buzzed. He checked it and his eyes narrowed. What is it? I asked. He showed me the screen. A security photo from a contact he had at the courthouse. Jared Tate, entering the building. But he wasn't there to defend Brandon. He was there to file paperwork against me. We leaned in, scanning the image. Jared was holding a thick folder. Charles made a few fast calls, then turned to me. He's trying to file a civil suit, claiming you tampered with HOA documents and stole land from them. It's a backup plan. If Brandon goes down, they still try to win through the courts. I shook my head slowly, rage boiling just under my skin. These people don't stop. Nope, Charles said. They push until you break. Or until you push back harder. That night, we didn't sleep. We pulled out every document, every photo, every timestamp. Charles had a friend in the local news who owed him a favor, and by sunrise, we had put together a full report. Fraud, forgery, illegal expansion plans, and criminal intimidation against a retired Marine. The headline went up before noon. HOA corruption. Developers' secret web of fake deeds and targeted veterans exposed. The story exploded. Within hours, news vans showed up at the ranch. I wasn't a man who liked cameras, but I stood on my porch and told the truth. I told them how Brandon lured me in, how they faked my signature, threatened me, hurt my dog, and even tried to burn my home down. The media pressure worked. The county clerk's office issued a freeze on all actions tied to my ranch. The sheriff called later that day. Judge just issued a bench warrant for Jared Tate. He's going to have a lot of explaining to do. Charles smiled and poured us both a drink. I think we turned the tide, old friend. I nodded. Feels like it. But just as we sat down to rest, boom, the windows shook. Max barked furiously and ran to the door. We rushed outside. Smoke was rising again, not from the barn, from the chicken coop. Someone had lit a second fire. The fire department was already on the way, thanks to the patrol car station nearby. But the damage was done. The coop was destroyed, chickens scattered, a few injured, some missing. But this time we saw it. A figure running into the woods. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my flashlight and took off after them, Charles close behind me. We ran through trees and underbrush, the beam of light bouncing off leaves and roots, until we reached a clearing. There he was, a man crouching by a parked ATV. Young, thin, hoodie pulled tight over his face. He didn't expect us to catch up so fast. Charles tackled him before he could start the engine. I shined the light in his face. He was maybe 19, wide-eyed, scared, and when I pulled back his hood, I recognized him, the front desk clerk from the Willow Creek HOA office, the one who told me the manager wasn't in. He started crying. "Please," he stammered. "They paid me. They said it was just pressure tactics. Said it was legal." "Who paid you?" I asked, kneeling beside him. "I don't know his real name," he cried. "He just called himself Mr. Black. Said if I didn't help, he'd come after my family." Charles looked at me grimly. "Looks like Brandon wasn't the mastermind after all," I said. He nodded. "There's someone bigger. Someone still pulling strings." The kid was arrested that night. But the real war wasn't over. Because now we knew there was another player. And if someone like Brandon was just a puppet, then the man behind all this? He hadn't shown his face yet. But I was going to find him. Because I didn't serve my country, come home, and build a life just to have it stolen by a shadow in a suit. They came for my land. They tried to scare me. But now, I was coming for them. 3 weeks had passed since the second fire. The chicken coop was gone. The barn was rubble. My land had scars now. Black streaks in the soil and caution tape still fluttering from what used to be fence posts. But the ranch stood. Max healed. And I never left. They tried to scare me off. Tried to buy me off. Burn me out. But I was still standing. Because you don't scare a Marine. And you sure as hell don't steal from one. The young man we caught, Tyler, that was his name, agreed to testify. The sheriff cut a deal with the district attorney. In exchange for immunity, Tyler handed over everything. Text messages, payments, names, drop-off locations. He even showed them the burner phones he'd been given. Most of it pointed to one name, Mr. Black. A ghost. No face. No real ID. But all roads led to him. And then, one night, we got lucky. Charles, digging like the bloodhound he is, found a trail. Bank transfers tied to an offshore account. A shell company listed as WCH Holdings that funded Willow Creek's development. That same shell company owned 5 other HOAs in 3 different states, all with identical patterns of land seizures, fake violations, and shady legal documents. One signature connected them all. Gregory Blackwood, a wealthy real estate tycoon from Austin, former city councilman, quiet, careful, invisible in plain sight. His name never appeared on the documents, just proxies, lawyers, and paper companies. But Gregory Blackwood was Mr. Black, and he was about to get dragged into the light. Charles and I took everything to the Texas Attorney General's office. With Tyler's testimony and the mountain of evidence we'd built, they launched an investigation into Blackwood's empire. They uncovered a decade of shady deals, rigged elections, and real estate scams, all targeting veterans, elderly folks, and people who lived too far outside the system to fight back. In 2 months, the entire operation came crashing down. Gregory Blackwood was indicted on 42 federal charges: wire fraud, forgery, conspiracy, and yes, attempted arson. Brandon took a plea deal and testified against him, crying like a baby in court, trying to save his skin. The others? Some skipped town. Some flipped. Others disappeared like rats off a sinking ship. But I stayed right where I was. The lien was reversed. My land was cleared. The original deed was returned, framed now and hanging above the fireplace. Charles and I rebuilt the barn together with help from volunteers. Vets, locals, even a few kids who saw the story on the news. One kid brought a chicken to replace the ones I lost. Named her Justice. Fitting. The new coop was better, stronger, Max even got a new bed and a ramp so he wouldn't have to hop up with his healing leg. I thought I'd feel angry forever, but something strange happened. As the smoke cleared, so did the bitterness. Because what they meant for harm brought a kind of unity I hadn't seen in years. The community rallied. Neighbors who barely waved before now stopped by with pie, tools, or just to talk. And me? I started writing about my land, my service, and what it means to stand your ground when everything you love is threatened. One day, a reporter asked me what I'd say to the people who tried to take everything from me. I said, they forgot one thing. Land can be stolen. Fences can be burned. But spirit, the heart of a man who's fought for his country, you can't take that. She smiled and asked, what now? I looked out over my ranch, the wind moving through the grass like a whisper. I live, I said, and I protect what's mine. And I did. Because no HOA, no con artist, no shadowy businessman could ever take away the truth. I'm Jack Turner, retired Marine, ranch owner, and the last man on earth you should ever try to push off his land.